Ubhayataha, from both sides, deepte, burning, Iva, like, Taskara, from thieves and rogues, Palayaho, and from the king. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. When the great sages consulted one another, they saw that the people were in a dangerous position from both directions. When a fire blazes on both ends of a log, the ants in the middle are in a very dangerous situation. Similarly, at that time, the people in general were in a dangerous position due to an irresponsible king on one side and thieves and rogues on the other. Arajik bhayadesha kruto raja tad arhana tatopyasid bhayam dvadya katham syad swasti dehinam. Thinking to save the state from irregularity, the sages began to consider that it was due to a political crisis that they made Vena king, although he was not qualified. But alas, now the people were being disturbed by the king himself. Under such circumstances, how could the people be happy? In Bhagavad Gita 18.5, it is stated that even in the renounced order, one should not give up sacrifice, charity, and penance. The brahmacharis must perform sacrifices, the grihasthas must give in charity, and those in the renounced order of life, the vanaprasthas and sannyasis, must practice penance and austerities. These are the procedures by which everyone can be elevated to the spiritual platform. When the sages and saintly people saw that King Mena had stopped all these functions, they became concerned about the people's progress. Saintly people preach God consciousness or Krishna consciousness because they are anxious to save the general populace from the dangers of animalistic life. There must be good government to see this, that the citizens are actually executing their religious rituals. And thieves and rogues must be curbed. When this is done, the people can advance peacefully in spiritual consciousness and make their lives successful. Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanishalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we are discussing from the canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, namely the fourth canto, and I'll discuss this verse broadly in 4 different parts. Here we look at the verse in the context of the Bhagavatam's discussion. The Bhagavatam's discussion is between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami. So in that context, we'll discuss what this verse implies. Then I'll discuss what this verse implies in the context of this particular pastime, which is the Vena pastime, which is where the focus is right now. Then we will discuss what this verse implies for us as devotees who are a part of a spiritual organization. And then we'll talk about what the verse applies, how the verse applies in the world today, in our functioning, in general for human society. So the broad context is that Parikshit, the Srimad Bhagavatam is a history. And it is also a particularly focused book. It is itihasa. Itihasa. Hasa means that it is technically called Purana, but the word itihasa also comes in the Bhagavatam. That many historical stories are told. But which particular stories are told? Those stories which will best help Parikshit Maharaj focus his consciousness on the Supreme Lord. And if you consider Parikshit Maharaj's context, though he had always seen himself as a protector of Brahmanas, and yet that was one of his defining, and this is how he saw himself. And yet what had happened to him? Two levels of disasters had happened. He had offended a Brahmana, and he had been cursed to die by a Brahmana. So one was his mistake, another was, one was, you could say, a mistake done by him, and another by him, and the other was a mistake done to him. And it was not just a mistake, it was a grave injustice that was done to him. So on seeing this, naturally the question might come up for him that why did this have to happen to me? That what can I do about it? And when he's thinking in this way, when this question comes to him, whenever anything bad happens to us, we feel bad about it. But especially when something is extremely unfair, that means if I make a tiny mistake, this is the size of my mistake. And then if this is the size of the reaction that I get, then we feel that it is patently unfair. And naturally our response to this is that we can easily feel resentful. So all the stories in the Bhagavatam are stories about how even great souls have faced such situations which could have caused them resentment. Dhruva, which is the story which came just in this canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, is a small child just wanting to sit on his father's lap, and he's neglected by his father and is insulted by his stepmother. Terrible thing. We'll see later Prahlad, he's just acting according to his natural devotion, and his own father tried to kill him. So at one level, a father is a much closer protector than a Brahmana. And there he suffered. We see Vritrasur or Chitraketu, he was with Shiva and Parvati, and there Parvati, a goddess, cursed him. And for no real fault of his. Even if his fault is a minor fault, he was not laughing out of derision. He was laughing out of amazement. But the point is, the Bhagavatam is telling Parikshit Maharaj that a bad thing happened to you, but worse things have happened to people before you. Good people just like you before you. And the focus was on how did they take shelter of the Lord? How did they deal with disaster? So how do we deal with disaster? That is the broad theme of the Bhagavatam. One way we could say is, we can ask the question, why did this happen to me? Or the broader question is, why do bad things happen to good people? And while that is an important question to ask, and it is at a philosophical level important to answer this question, but if you see, that is not the most important question. The Bhagavatam does not go into any past life description of Shamik Rishi's karma and Parikshit's karma, and he had done this to you, and that's why you did this to him, and that's why you are now getting this reaction. Rather, the Bhagavatam reframes the question. When bad things happen to good people, they will happen. This is the nature of the world. When they happen, what do good people do? What do good people do? How do they respond? How do they act? That is the defining question of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the focus. All the stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam are illustrating this point. And this particular pastime of Vena is actually highlighting this even more. We could say there is a trouble created by the Brahmana's actions. So the trouble was created by the Brahmana's actions, and now it is going to be described how the Brahmanas will solve that problem. So what is the trouble created by the Brahmana's actions? If we consider this as the time sequence, timeline. So here we can say Vena's cruelty started being seen as a child also. Vena was cruel. Then Anga just renounced the world. And then the Brahmanas decided to make Brahmanas enthroned Vena. This is in time sequence, one by one events are happening. And then what happened was Vena turned tyrannical. He became a tyrant. He started exploiting everyone. And now he started exploiting, abusing. And now the Brahmanas are pensive. They are deliberating what to do in such a situation. So if you see, they could have said, a question could have been asked that Vena was already known to be cruel. When he was known to be cruel, why make him the king? Was that a mistake for the Brahmana's part to make him the king? Well, in this world, what is right and what is wrong is very, very difficult to decide. Broadly, the Mahabharata says, how do we go about deciding right and wrong? There are 3 criteria for deciding this right, wrong decision. So I have now moved to the second part of the, within the context of the Bhagavatam, I have discussed this pastime. Now we are discussing this particular verse within the context of the pastime. So we look at the right, wrong decision. It says that whenever we do an action, there is the content of the action, that is the central thing. And then before that, there is the intent of the action. And after that comes the consequence of the action. And all 3 need to be considered for deciding whether a thing is right or wrong. So the intent, the content, and the consequence. Now we may say the consequence is going to come after the action. Yes, that is true. And when we see, oh, the consequence is not the way it was expected, then we do some course correction. So consider an example over here. Say a person, there's a doctor, and the doctor gives a particular treatment. The doctor is well-intentioned. Okay, I don't know what this disease is, but these symptoms look like this, like this, like this. So based on this, I infer this must be the disease, and I'll give this treatment. But then that treatment seems to, that treatment doesn't work. Rather, the symptoms of the patient worse, and the patient starts showing symptoms which indicate that there is that the effect that the treatment has had unwanted side effects. So the intent is treat without clear diagnosis. Sometimes the symptoms are not enough to give a very clear diagnosis. Then there is the intent is we want to help the patient, but then the treatment is given for a you can say for a surmised malady. Surmised means it's a guessed malady. The doctor is not sure what it is, and there are side effects, and health worsens. This is what doctors call as contraindicated sometimes. So then what does the doctor do at this time? Is the doctor culpable that your treatment made the patient worse? Well, if Other doctors evaluate the case. Sometimes it can become a medical malpractice case. I came to you to be treated and my condition is worse now. But then there are other expert doctors who will evaluate the case, and then they will say, okay, based on this diagnosis or this, based on this particular report that they had, the doctor's decision was a reasonable decision. Can everyone mute themselves, please? So
Prabhuji, you are muted at the moment.
sorry, is it better now?
Yeah, all good now. Thank you.
So we can say that the Brahmanas, if you look at this three-fold diagram, the intent, content, and consequence, we apply this to the Vena pastime now. So what we'll find is, with respect to the Vena pastime, what was the content of the action? That they enthroned Vena. What was the intent? That their broad responsibility will make him a good ruler. And they knew that he had certain tendencies towards cruelty. But their thought was that if he becomes a king, he will become responsible. And even if he has these tendencies towards cruelty, those will be directed towards the rogues and the thieves. And sometimes the king has to be harsh, has to be hard on the crime to maintain law and order in society. But what happened was, he was harsh on everyone, not just criminals, even ordinary citizens. He was tormenting them. And especially what happened was, rather than not just being harsh on everyone, for him, see, for some people, responsibility brings out the best within them. There are two sides, when we get a position. From that position, we can see that I have got responsibility, or we can see that I have got power and privilege. So when somebody gets a position, if they focus on the responsibility that they are having, that can make them better. Oh, now I have to do this properly. But if they focus on the power, that can easily make them worse. So if somebody becomes a principal of a school, for example, then that's a significant position. They can see this is a responsibility, that I have to make sure that the educational facilities are good, that the students are studying nicely, that the teachers are teaching well, and I can facilitate everyone. I can provide supportive environment for the teachers, supportive environment for students, and that will make the person in that post act more responsibly and become a better person. They'll think more about others, not just think about oneself, but think of how I can do my responsibilities properly. But if that person simply focuses on the power that comes from the position, then they'll think, okay, I gave this order, why didn't you obey me? No, but I was thinking of this. How dare you disobey me? And every small disobedience can lead to abuse of power and severe reaction. So that will make the person worse. Whether somebody holds them to account or not, that person's character will worsen, because they're rajas and tamas, their controlling mentality. They'll become a control freak, and they will do bad karma, and there'll be consequences of that. So when a position is given what will be the result of that? It is not easy to estimate. So the Brahmanas had done the action with a particular intention, but the result was something different. So here Parikshit Maharaj is being told that in the past also, somebody could say the Brahmanas messed up, that they gave power to a person who was not worthy of power. Well, maybe, but the story is going to tell, if at all somebody consider the Brahmanas messed up, the Brahmanas are also going to fix the mess. And actually speaking, we can go deeper. And so the point is that it was not the Brahmanas who messed up. Rather, it was a situation where the Brahmanas, where the responsibility of fixing the mess was thrust on the Brahmanas. That when Anga just left the kingdom, the Brahmanas had to take up that responsibility of ruling the kingdom. Now you may say, did Anga mess up? Yes, at one level, true. But Anga also felt, I had done my part. I didn't have a child. I then performed, I did endeavored, got a child. I tried to discipline my child. That didn't happen. What can I do? It's my time. It's time for me to move ahead. This was a role I tried to do. There is some success, some failure. This chapter of my life is over. I want to move ahead now. So we could debate the ethics of Veda Anga's decision. But the Bhagavatam's focus is overall, when the chapter of life is closed, when a particular chapter of life is closed, we have to move on to the next chapter. So Anga moved on to the next chapter. And then the mess that was created with no king available, what happened was that the Brahmanas had to deal with that. So we could say the Brahmanas were trying to clear a mess they had not created. Mess that was not, that's what's happening. They were clearing a mess that was not their creation. They were simply trying to resolve that mess. And in trying to resolve that mess, resolving it had led to another mess. Now, what was the mess earlier? Without a king, the rogues and thieves were wreaking havoc on society. But now they found that they had appointed a king, but the king turned out to be the biggest rogue and thief. And the king was disrupting things completely. And the Bhagavatam's focus is especially on how the king was not only persecuting citizens, but the power had gone so much to Vena's head that he was thinking, I am God. And he had stopped the worship of the Supreme Lord. So there the Brahmanas felt this has become unbearable. And we'll see later when they go to pacify him and doesn't listen to him. So then they will resolve it again. They will neutralize Vena, and then they will have Pruthu come, and Pruthu will become a great king. So from Vena, Pruthu will come. So even from a material perspective, fixing things, even if it is to be done by Brahmanas, sometimes it's not guaranteed that a particular fix will actually fix things. You try it, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So here, Parikshit Maharaj is assured that the Brahmanas are capable of fixing messes. And Parikshit Maharaj is now, although he was cursed by a Brahmana, he has entrusted himself to the care of Brahmanas. Parikshit Maharaj did not become angry with either the particular sage who had cursed him, Shringi, or his father, Shamik Rishi, or the Brahmana community in general. Okay, that was unfair, but he accepted it. And now he's entrusted himself with the Brahmanas. So Parikshit Maharaj is, in one sense, through this pastime, is being assured that the Brahmanas can fix mess that is created. So Shukdev Goswami will speak the Srimad Bhagavatam and elevate and liberate Parikshit Maharaj. So we can say Parikshit Maharaj's situation. What is the situation? So he was he was a mess created by a Brahmana, that is Shringi. And for him, what will happen? Mess resolved by a Brahmana, that is, here it will be Shukadeva Goswami. So in this way, what is going to happen is Parikshit Maharaj is being assured in terms of this particular pastime also. Now, moving to the third part, I said, how does this apply to us as devotees? As devotees, what happens is that one time Giriraj Maharaj, he writes in one of his books that he had a serious question that there was one devotee, young devotee, who had been appointed as a GBC. And when he was appointed as the GBC, he seemed to be very influential at one level. But devotees also knew that he was a little, everybody is vulnerable to temptation, but he was especially vulnerable. And then he succumbed. He fell down and he broke a regulative principle. And then in the early days, the devotees really didn't have a very clear understanding of philosophy. So they had thought that if Prabhupada had selected this person, then this person must be good. So they had put aside their judgment. But then when that person fell away, they started thinking, did Prabhupada make a mistake? When Prabhupada appointed this person, was it a mistake? So then they asked Prabhupada. So when they asked Prabhupada, so again, if you apply the timeline, so this devotee became leader, was made into a leader. Then what happened? The leader fell away. And when the devotees asked Prabhupada, they thought, the devotees in general started thinking, was Prabhupada wrong? Did he commit a mistake? When they finally asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada said that actually everyone has free will. Prabhupada focused on free will. So he said that based on how that devotee was serving, I felt that I decided that he could be entrusted responsibility. And that's how I entrusted responsibility to him. I'm paraphrasing Prabhupada's words over here. So based on the way he had been performing services, he was given a bigger service. He's given a bigger responsibility. But then the free will doesn't go away. The free will can be misused. So even when a pure devotee is giving guidance, there may be action that is done, and there's an intent with which the action is done. That devotee is doing service, but Prabhupada, he's given a bigger responsibility. He'll become more responsible. Prabhupada was aware of the vulnerability of that devotee, the weakness of that devotee. But what happened in this case was, the consequence was that the devotee fell. Devotee, rather than using the free will properly, succumbed further. And then there were the results of that. So then Prabhupada was still kind to that devotee. But then Prabhupada said that withdrew him from the position. So there was one devotee who, in fact, he was a very charismatic leader. And he was such a charismatic leader that Prabhupada also glorified him. And then he started circulating the idea, or rather his wife or whoever it was, some people around him started circulating the idea that he is the reincarnation of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. And he started claiming that it was, in one sense, by saying he's the reincarnation of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he started claiming as if he's in a position superior to Srila Prabhupada. Now, in fact, this may seem ridiculous for us today. But when Prabhupada came to know about it, Prabhupada was very upset. Prabhupada came to that place and he talked with that devotee and very expertly, took the temple's treasury, temple's office, temple documents, keys from him and everything. And he relieved him of that position. He said, you can continue the service, but you cannot make claims like this. Unfortunately, in our moment right now, the same thing, history is happening. There are some disciples of a particular guru who are claiming that their guru is Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur reincarnated, and that it was he who sent Prabhupada to establish ISKCON, But devotees messed up ISKCON so much that he himself had to come now to fix the mess. So this is outrageous. To claim that one is superior to Prabhupada, for a follower of Prabhupada to claim like that. That is actually, in the name of respecting one's guru, one is actually disrespecting one's param guru. But the point I'm making is that actions are done with particular intentions, but the consequences can sometimes be very different. They can be completely opposite also. So in such a situation, what we need to do is we have to deal with life as it unfolds. Sometimes the best intentions, our good intentions are good for the Lord. The Lord is bhavagrahi. He looks at our heart, he looks at our intentions. But the world is ruthless. Krishna is merciful, but the world is merciless. Our intentions might be good. So if you consider, are good intentions good enough? I just wanted to serve. I just wanted to do something wonderful for Krishna. I just wanted to give an opportunity to that particular devotee. So we may act with good intentions, and Krishna, as being merciful, is pleased by our good intentions. But we are not in with Krishna in the spiritual world right now. The world is merciless. If we have made a misjudgment, if we have not judged the situation properly, then the merciless world will pulverize us, can destroy us. So we need to correct our actions. We need to fix this mistake. Just good intentions are not a substitute for bad judgment. Good intentions are not a substitute for bad judgment. So this is what is a key takeaway from the next canto. Good intentions, they are not, they don't override bad judgment. And that is what happens to Bharat Maharaj. His intention is good. Oh, this baby deer is drowning. Its mother has died. I had to protect her. Well, saving that deer was good enough, baby deer. But thinking that now I have to become a lifelong protector of that deer, that was bad judgment. So good intention is no protector from bad judgment. And now, can we say it was a bad judgment from the Brahmanas? Well, we may not. The point is that the Brahmanas made a decision based on the situation that they were handled. And when they realized that this situation has escalated, things have become worsened, now they are deliberating to decide what to do. So Srila Prabhupada himself at times said that he wrote a letter to Sumti Moraji, who was his sponsor. So in the 1965-66, he was in touch with her. And he said, I'm experimenting with various ways to see how these Western people can be inspired to practice Krishna Bhakti. So even Prabhupada himself used the word, I am experimenting. Now, what does experimenting mean? No, Prabhupada said that I am simply following my spiritual master. Well, yes, Prabhupada was fully following spiritual master in terms of having the purpose of sharing Krishna's message. But the process, how to go about doing that had to be experimented. Would that be starting an institution in India? Would it go to America, waiting for funds from India and then starting outreach in America? Would it be trying to start a center in a prosperous part of the city? Would it be working with somebody who is actually Mayavadi? So there are many experiments that Prabhupada tried. And most of them, they hit a brick wall. And then finally, when Prabhupada started approaching the counterculture, then leave alone hitting a brick wall, it actually started a gigantic wave of mercy. So he engaged with the counterculture. The people who would have been considered the least likely candidates for his outreach, he was so pure and they were living so impurely. They were into drugs. Prabhupada had never even taken tea or coffee. But they turned out to be the most receptive candidates for him. So even for Srila Prabhupada, sometimes you start something with the best intention. But does that mean it will work? Not necessarily. You try things, some things work, some things don't work. If they don't work, then stop it. At one time, Srila Prabhupada started the political party. There was one devotee, Balwant Prabhupada said, he was a good speaker, he was charismatic. Prabhupada said that you can become the next president of America. And Prabhupada was, for a particular phase, Prabhupada was very enthusiastic. He was speaking about the political, in God we trust. That was the political party Prabhupada started. And then it seemed Prabhupada lost interest. And then Balwant Prabhu came and asked Prabhupada, are you not enthusiastic about the political party? Prabhupada said, yes, we are. Prabhupada had said earlier that one advantage of politics is that you can freely criticize other people. You can criticize their policies, you can criticize their behavior. So, but then Prabhupada said that I'm enthusiastic about this party, but don't ask me for any money. Prabhupada wanted to spread Krishna consciousness various ways, but when he realized that actually launching a political party meant a huge amount of funding. There is publicity that is required. There's a whole team that is required. And so much money is required to promote a candidate. Prabhupada said the Lakshmi that we have, we want to use it directly for sharing Krishna Bhakti. So Prabhupada said, you can do it, but don't ask me for any money. So Prabhupada decided that that's not an area where he wanted to focus his energy. So sometimes when we do an activity, we find out that, hey, this is not turning out the way I expected. This is becoming far more complicated than what I expected. Then a devotee can change track. So with respect to when we get from our guru, what Srila Prabhupada following his guru, Prabhupada was fixed in purpose. And he was flexible in practice. Fixed in purpose means I have to share Krishna Bhakti. But which way to share Bhakti? Let's try this. Whatever works, he tried that. So that is how we also need to. Sometimes we take up a service, and maybe our Guru Maharaj has told us, some senior devotee whom we respect has told us that service. And we're trying it, it's not working. Nothing seems to be happening. People don't seem to be interested. Then we may decide, okay, maybe this service is not the most effective service. I still want to follow my spiritual master's instruction. I still want to share Krishna Bhakti. I still want to do some seva. But maybe if the Ganga flowing towards the ocean, the Ganga flows, if at a particular place it's blocked, it finds another way and keeps moving forward. So Srila Prabhupada was like that. And so that is how we as devotees, we recognize that sometimes even instructions given with the best intentions, if they start having counterproductive consequences, we need to recalibrate. We can consult senior devotees again, but we need to recalibrate and then decide how to move forward. And the last part I'll talk is about how this applies to us as human beings in society. So this particular pastime is about broadly the abuse of power. How Vena is abusing power. And this is a big, big danger in today's world. Now, if you consider, many devotees feel that no, politics is just dirty business, and I don't want anything to do with politics. Well, that's one way of looking at it. But the point is that we may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in us. That means political situations affect us. The devotees living in Ukraine or Russia may not have been concerned about the geopolitical tensions between the two countries. But when a war broke out, the devotees on both sides have been affected. All the more in Ukraine, because that is where the aggression and the action has been. So a devotee cannot be blind to what's happening in the world. So with respect to politics, that could be two extreme approaches. That one is where people make political leaders into almost God. And this is a tendency. So politics, it can solve all problems. That's one way of looking at it. Only this person gets elected, then everything will be solved. People start treating a particular politician, their favorite leader, like a Messiah. That this person is this. If only this person were elected, everything will be solved. Well, the other extreme is it we can think that it can't solve any problem. It will make no difference. In fact, it will only worsen things. Why? Because all politicians are corrupt. All politicians are useless. Well, first extreme, to treat anybody as God, that is wrong. Nobody can solve all problems. Even the best political leader, that person can only empower individuals to solve their own problems. We'll talk about that. But the skeptical attitude is also wrong. It is a favorite pastime of devotees to smash political leaders today by comparing them with the past political leaders. Now, Prabhupada does that, but Prabhupada is also very measured. Do we compare our standards with past standards? How many of us can be as pure in our daily life as the sages or the citizens of Satyuga were? So if we as citizens today in Kali Yuga are not like the citizens of Satyuga, then how can we expect the kings of today to be like the kings of Satyuga or of any previous age? Rather than simply demonizing all politicians, we understand that politicians are just human beings like us. And we may say politicians are so corrupt. But if we had been given that power, can we guarantee that we wouldn't succumb to that power? We might not be corrupted by that power. We might have withheld, we might have resisted the pressures, even if it's not corruption, but every political post comes with a lot of pressures from different pressure groups. Can we guarantee that we would not have succumbed to any pressure groups? Well, if we think we would have been immune, then that probably means that we need a strong dose of humility for ourselves. So politics, like any other avenue in life, can solve some problems. So politics, ultimately, it is only Krishna consciousness. It is only raising one's consciousness that can help so people individually and collectively. But what it can do is, it can facilitate the raising of consciousness, or at least stop obstructing the raising of consciousness. If that much is also done, that is also good. If basic amenities are provided for by a government, then that itself allows people to focus on their spiritual growth, at least those who want to. If the government is not aggressively anti-religious, is not persecuting a particular religion, is not aggressively promoting atheism. In Soviet Russia and in communist China, religious people are often persecuted. Many of you may read the story of salted bread, where our devotees in Soviet Russia were persecuted. So we can say most of us live in governments which are relatively far more favorable, or at least not at all hostile to our practice of bhakti. So as devotees, each one of us, we live in society, and it's not that we have to be constantly enamored with political news. But the point is that we may not be a Kshatriya ourselves, or we may be, but each one of us has our social responsibility. Varnashram is about each individual doing their social responsibility. Instead of blaming others for abusing their power, we focus on using our power responsibly. The Brahmanas will do that. The Brahmanas normally don't exercise extraordinary power, but when they see Vena abusing his power, they will exercise extraordinary power, and they will rid the world of Vena, and they will ensure that a more worthy king is eventually established. So what we do is, everyone plays their role responsibly. Krishna uses the word for this, that Loka Sangraha. Everyone plays a responsible role in society, and that is how what will happen is Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha means maintenance of the world will happen. The world will continue functioning. When the pandemic was there, most of us, we heard classes on Zoom. Like now the Bhagavatam class is still going on Zoom. So somebody set up this technology, somebody created this technology, somebody is maintaining this technology. So all those people are acting responsibly, and that's how Loka Sangraha is happening. So as devotees, we also have our roles and we act responsibly according to our particular situation, according to our particular position in the world. And our bhakti can actually enable us to act even more responsibly, because bhakti frees us from our selfish drives. Bhakti decreases the lust, anger, greed within us, and thus we can act with greater responsibility in maintaining the world, so that more and more people have the facility to raise their consciousness toward Krishna. So I'll summarize. I spoke broadly in 4 parts today. I started first by speaking about the first point was about how this verse in this particular pastime in the Bhagavatam, what is it doing? The pastime itself is reassuring Parikshit Maharaj that even if a Brahmana caused a problem to you, there's another Brahmana who will solve the problem. So don't feel resentful. It is addressing Parikshit Maharaj's possible resentfulness. It is freeing Parikshit Maharaj from resentfulness in general, and resentfulness against Brahmanas in particular. Is addressing that for Parikshit Maharaj. Then at the second level, we can see, you can say, overall pastime. Then with respect to the specific pastime, we discussed how the Brahmanas, was their action wrong? No. Right, wrong. How do we decide that? We try to keep our intention good, and we try to do the right action. There's intention, there is action, and there is consequence. The content of the action and consequence. So sometimes when the consequence goes wrong, in this case of Brahmanas, the consequence had gone wrong. Now they are going to fix it. So we can't just blame someone because their actions led to some bad consequences. We have to also consider their intent. And then we talked about, as devotees, that even as devotees, sometimes we may be given an instruction with the best intention, but things may not work. Prabhupada said he was himself experimenting. His Guru Maharaj gave him the instruction, but Prabhupada was experimenting. So as devotees, we see Prabhupada's example was fixed in purpose, flexible in practice. So we also, sometimes we are given some guideline, we are given some service, and it's not working out. We have to use our God-given intelligence to see how, like the Ganga, our consciousness can keep moving towards Krishna. And human society, we discussed that anybody can abuse power. And because politicians have so much power, they can abuse it so much more. So rather than thinking that politicians will solve all problems or politicians can't solve any problems, we understand that we may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in us. So that everyone has a role in society, and everyone's role make a difference. So everyone contributes to Loka Sangraha. Everyone tries to do their role responsibly and contributes to Loka Sangraha. And in case Krishna consciousness can help us to do Loka Sangraha better. Each Krishna consciousness can help each one of us, whether it is a non-politician or a politician, a Brahmana or non-Brahmana. Everybody can do their social responsibility better if their consciousness is purified, and then the world is maintained so that everyone can further raise their consciousness. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you at the outset. Thank you very much. It's a clear and very distinctive way to let us know all the aspects of this verse can be deliberated upon. You have dealt with so nicely that you have given 4 directions to it. First, initially, the discussion between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami, and the initial reaction of Parikshit Maharaj about that the Brahman has committed an offense initially, but Shukdev Goswami was able to tell them that although they were experimenting at the time, and they have given the responsibility to a person thinking that the responsibility will make him, will fix his bad things, and if he focuses on that, the things will improve. But the process, they were experimenting the process, but the outcome was not what they expected. The consequence was not there then. So they made another attempt. I mean, they removed him And often you have also given the example of Prabhupada, that Prabhupada has also at one time tried to make one person a devotee, giving a higher position, thinking that by the responsibility he will improve himself. But that did not happen, and in the process, he was experimenting with the process. But everyone has got a free will, and if we use our free will, then for the for the benefit of the Krishna conscious, use it for our Krishna consciousness, then it becomes a happy situation and everybody is benefited. But if we do not do that, the world is a place, although Krishna is merciful, but the world is merciless, in other words, and always problem happens in this material world. And and some people have an idea that political leaders will solve all the problems. They have got that is one view, and the other extreme view is that they can't do anything. They are very, corrupt and helpless. And they're very selfish people. But we should avoid both the extreme things. And you have also clearly pointed out what they can do if their consciousness is good and they do their duties properly. At least it can help people to make them responsible, and the way the world can perform better. And you have used the term loko sangraha, means everyone will be able to improve their consciousness in a good environment where the political leader will create. Yes. In other words, the world would be a better place if he creates an environment situation where everyone takes a responsibility in Krishna consciousness and they can perform their duty better. And in this way, the whole world will be a better place. So thank you very much. And if any other people have any other comments and any other thing they want to say, please come and ask Prabhuji, and he will be able to answer all this question. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Prabhu.
Such a great lecture in the very morning here in Auckland. You have a very, very deep analysis how to understand each verse in a so clear way, pointing out the 4 points and elaborating the 4 points in details, and understanding these 4 points in the real world makes us so much interesting. And you have given so much good example how Prabhupada was also experimenting the same way it was done in the age of Bina's time. So it's all about everybody's participation. It is not once. So the teamwork is very, very important. Team doesn't mean only the people in the devotees area, but every people has to be taken care of. And if everybody takes their own role in a responsible way, the life or the world will be a better place. Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. It appears Caleb put his question to us. Prabhuji, you can ask him to.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. I'll take this opportunity. I'm not sure whether you're referring to me. Thank you so much for the class, Chaitanya Charan. That was very inspiring and so clear. And I absolutely love the visual element with your drawings and tablets. My question was around, perhaps you could expand a little bit on what Loka Sangraha means for us in terms of, like, we live in a society, say here in New Zealand, where most of the issues at hand aren't really facilitating Krishna consciousness one way or the other. For instance, the political parties, like, we can deliberate at great depth about whether they're helping the movement, but from external perspective, it seems like both parties are relatively liberal with Krishna consciousness. So what does our responsibility look like in situations where there's a lot of politics going on, but it's not really to do with Krishna consciousness or not, seemingly? What is our responsibility, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. If we function in the world today, in today's politics, most of the issues don't seem to have much to do with Krishna consciousness directly. So each devotee is an individual, and we can't artificially change the basic nature of devotees. So some devotees may be more interested in politics, some devotees may be less interested in politics, and depending on one's interest level, how a person functions, how much a person sees their own relevance to politics will vary. So politics is itself a complicated field. There are no easy solutions. There are difficult decisions to be made, and whether the politicians are qualified to make the decisions or not, the bureaucrats are, whoever is qualified. The point is that there are no magic wand solutions to real life problems. That Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita gives Arjuna directions about to expand his vision of what he's doing. Krishna does not give Arjuna any archery skills that he's already got from other sources. So our focus is on giving spiritual knowledge and helping individuals raise their consciousness. And with that raised consciousness, individuals will be able to find solutions to specific issues that they are facing. And that's why how much involved a particular person is, that will determine how well they will deal with the issue. So in India, in some parts of India, ISKCON has become quite influential. In one state in India, almost devotees are almost 7% of the demographic. That's a significant vote bank. And then devotees can utilize that for making sure that certain our interests are protected, that we can advocate devotee interests or general spiritual interests. So that can be done in some places where we are in a significant number. But even then, it is only when we make our voice heard, we make our presence felt, that things work out. So it is not that as devotees we need to be aware of and be commenting on every issue. And Srila Prabhupada himself, so I would I'm talking about this at different levels. At an individual level, each of us may not, based on our interest, we may be interested, we may not be interested. At a broader level, as our number increases, then we can be a significant influence. So we cannot just hope for an idealistic society to come up. Srila Prabhupada said that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that, I long for the time when a high court judge will be wearing tilak. Now, how might that happen? We could say that can happen broadly in two ways. One way is that it is the government itself becomes a devotee government, and that government changes, that government appoints a devotee as a high court judge. So we can say social change is going to happen. Social change, you are talking about a spiritual direction. So it can either happen top down or it can happen bottom up. Top down means a top leader becomes a devotee, or a devotee becomes a leader, and then the devotee appoints other devotees as leaders. That's a top down kind of change. A bottom up change can mean that devotees themselves become so competent, so responsible. And this was the trajectory that Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself followed. That at that time, the government was hardly supportive of devotees or even supportive of Indian culture, the British government in India. But what he did was, he was such a competent judge, or he was such a competent professional, that he was appointed by the British government as a judge. So devotees become competent, devotees are seen as trustworthy and reliable. And then the devotees devoting markings like a tilak, they are not seen as a disqualification. Oh, you will be a sectarian person. You are you are just a bigot or you are just irrelevant. There was some survey done in America about what Americans think about the Hare Krishnas. So different people give different answers, but one answer that came repeatedly was summarized by the researcher as something like a jolly group of impractical people. So we dance and sing on the street, so we are jolly, but impractical. These people, what can they tell us? They're just in their own world, they're dancing, they're singing, they're doing their festivals. Well, it's not that what we do is impractical. There is a lot of practical wisdom available also. So as devotees, we can hope for a top-down change, but we can also work for a bottom-up change. So if we become responsible in whatever roles we are doing, our influence increases by that. And as our influence increases, who knows what we will be able to do. So now another point we can say is Prabhupada, if we look at the early BTGs, Prabhupada was constantly commenting on social issues. He would read newspapers and he would comment on those social issues. He would comment on, say, something that has happened in Germany, something that has happened in UK, something that is happening in some part of India, what the newspapers are saying. So that way, now that particular strategy at that time didn't have sufficient impact. But eventually, if as devotees we comment on social issues, then people will see that we have something valuable, and we can't comment social issues very simply fanatically. That okay, if only the Ukrainian president and the Russian president started chanting Hare Krishna, all violence will go away. Well, okay, maybe, but that's not the kind of solution that people are looking for. So if we can comment in a balanced way, in an intelligible way on social issues, then people start appreciating, you people have some wisdom that can apply to the world. Over a period of time, we'll be seen as a resource in mainstream society for wise inputs on contemporary events. And that way our influence will increase. So some devotees can comment on social issues and they need to study the social issues. Vidyam cha avidyam cha yastadvedo bhayam. That we need to know spiritual knowledge and we need to know the material situation. Only then we can comment on it. So we need to be expert for that field. So as our movement is expanding, some devotees are becoming more and more socially aware, socially conscious, and some devotees are commenting on social issues. In Back to God, we have the Vedic Observer column, and now some devotees are planning to come up with a website called Krishna Think Tank, and devotees from various parts of the world who are expert in various fields will comment on various issues. Hopefully that will work out. So we are, from a historical perspective, while our tradition goes thousands of years old, our movement is just around 60 years old, 55, 60 years old. So we are in the evolving stage. And as our movement becomes broader, then we will also start becoming more and more socially relevant. And that's how, as devotees, we can shape, even if not everybody doesn't become a devotee, we can shape the mainstream perception of us and even reshape some mainstream opinions about certain things. Those are some incremental changes we can do. Does that answer your question, Sella?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Shall we stop here? Is there no other question then? So, Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your nice class, and hope to see you again in Auckland in future.
Thank you. Happy to be of service. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpurvascha kripasinubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande.